Well, welcome back to the Good Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Beers, and I'm joined today by a truly remarkable guest, Dr. Mark Ott, the inaugural dean of the brand new Brigham Young University Medical School. Dr. Ott's career spans leadership at Intermountain Healthcare, surgical and academic roles at Johns Hopkins University, Harvard Medical School, Stanford Medical School, and the University of Utah. He's been recognized as Faculty Teacher of the Year in Surgery and received the Intermountain's Lifetime Achievement Award. And now he's kind of moving away from that and moving into a new role, stepping into, I think, one of the most exciting but challenging areas in medicine right now, medical education, and especially building a brand new medical school from the ground up. And today we're going to talk about his vision for the medical school, what he thinks about training new medical students, and the role of technology in shaping medicine and how we train doctors of the future when things are changing so fast. So, Mark, it is so great to have you here, and congratulations on this new endeavor. I wonder how does one find out that how did you get approached to say, hey, we want you to be the head of this new medical school? Is it something that you knew was coming, or was it kind of out of the blue?
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I never, ever thought that I would be a dean of a medical school.
Yeah.
I love what I've been doing. Medicine has been a wonderful career. People ask me, how did I go into medicine? It was really when I was young. My parents said, you should be a doctor. And they had no exposure to medicine. They had no idea what they were talking about. But I was an obedient son, and I said, if my parents think I should do it, then I would do that. And to be honest, they were right. I don't know that there would have been a career that I would have loved more than what I got to do in medicine.
That's awesome.
And after many years of practicing, every year from when I was about 55 years on, and at my birthday, I would sit down and reflect and pray and think about, is what I'm doing what God would have me do? And for every year until 2024, the answer was yes. This is where I should be. And then in 2024, the answer was different. And so I talked with my wife, Stephanie, and we decided that we would retire a year from then.
Okay.
So I was planning on retiring in June of 2025, and I let Intermountain know that so they could make plans to replace me and get somebody in who would love my patients as much as I have, and care for them. And so we were starting to think about serving missions or humanitarian service for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I got a call in September asking us to come and meet with the First Presidency.
That's quite a call. Yeah,
it was. It was an unexpected call, but it was a privilege to go in and meet with President Nelson and then President Oaks and President Eyring as well, and to find out that I was given the privilege of helping to create the BYU School of Medicine.
Oh, that's incredible. So you came home and you thought about it and said, what do we want to do now? Did they give you a whole lot of direction to say, this is what we want you to do? Or did you have kind of a clean slate to say, you go build it the way that you think you should build it?
Well, fortunately, we believe that prophets speak with God.
Yep.
And so I had about an hour with 3 prophets giving us some great counsel about what could be done. But they were also very clear that I had a blank slate and that we were to do what we thought was best. It was wonderful that they said, oh, by the way, we have a person who can help you if you want. But if you don't want, you don't have to take this person, And I said, well, who is it? And they said it was Dustin Matsumori.
Okay.
And I had known Dustin for years at Intermountain, and he's as talented and as wise and as kind as anybody you would ever meet. And so I was thrilled to find out that Dustin had already been arranged as my partner in this.
That's great.
And so I said, I'd love to have Dustin. And so the two of us set about doing this.
So you started with just the two of you. And both of us have been involved in medical education and been in medical schools. I've been at a couple of medical schools that had tens of thousands of people involved in the medical school. You start with 2 people. I guess, I've built a few companies, and I know one of the things I know is getting the right people on board early really sets the tone for right. the whole venture. So did you have some people in mind right out of the gate, or did you spend a lot of time thinking about, how do we put the right pieces of the puzzle together, and where are you in that process right now? Because I assume you're not going to come out of the gate with tens of thousands of people, but hundreds of people probably in the short order that are going to be involved in this endeavor. It's a big deal.
Yeah, the one thing that's unique about BYU and makes it very different than other schools of medicine is that it's meant to be different than all the other schools of medicine. I'm convinced that God does not need another medical school, to train physicians. He needs this medical school to train physicians who will see this as a ministry and as a calling. And that was very clear from the very beginning. And so he's actually, in some respects, made it easy to find the right people because he literally puts them right in front of us.
Isn't that incredible?
It is one of the great miracles is over and over again, somebody is put right in front of us that has exactly the right talents and abilities and desires that we need for a certain position.
Yeah, I've heard you say a couple times that you're looking at, these are all the things that need to happen. We need to get accreditation. We need to get all these things. And just people come out of the blue and say, hey, can I help? Are you running into the right people? And I mean, it's just amazing. And what an amazing network of people that you can tap into as well. And the alumni and church members all over the world wanting to be involved and to support this. Now, I think one of the things that I think that we've heard that you've expressed is this is not going to be a normal or a typical medical school. I shouldn't say normal, but it's not going to be a typical medical school. There's going to be some focus on some areas that maybe most medical schools aren't thinking about. And one of those is looking at humanitarian and international type of impact for this medical school. It's going to be down in Provo, Utah, but the reach and how are you thinking about that and how are you going to accomplish that?
Yeah, so we have prophetically inspired design elements that were given to us right from the start. And every meeting that we've had, which have been hundreds and hundreds of working group meetings and things like that, every one of those meetings has begun with this slide of these design elements. And so it keeps us focused. But one of those design elements is furthering the global humanitarian efforts of the church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints last year had more than 3,800 projects in, close to 200 countries around the world, that encompassed, almost $1.5 billion in humanitarian aid. And, what medical school wouldn't want to be part of that?
Yeah.
I mean, it is one of the crown jewels of being part of BYU is that we have access to all of this humanitarian service going on. And to be honest, very little research.
Yeah.
And so we have this opportunity to supply a research arm that can help not only with the service, but figuring out how to do it even better and reach more people and bless more lives.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because it's the opportunity is not so much building what's going on in a lab, but the world is the lab, right? Real world data and underserved populations in a way that I think is kind of unique, right? That it's pretty exciting and leveraging the infrastructure and the connections and the groundwork that's been built over the years of doing good work all over the world. And one of the things that I think is exciting to me is, I think a lot about all the advances that we've made here, and we've been blessed with having access to amazing medical advances. And just in your and my career, just looking back of where we were and where we've come a long ways in a lot of areas. But unfortunately, a lot of the world hasn't experienced that, and they're still kind of back in a different time point. And I think, one of the great challenges of our day is, I think, overcoming a lot of this health disparity. And I assume that's going to be a focus for the school and a focus for how can we translate all of the stuff that we know and the training that we give these great, bright, new young doctors, and how can we impact the world that way?
Right. Yeah, it's sad that even in this country where we have such incredible healthcare resources, many of the citizens of our country don't have access to the healthcare that others have. And in fact, it's a well-known fact that your zip code changes your life expectancy by 10 years.
Incredible.
And so the need is great around the world, and it's great here in the United States. Yep. And It will take likely decades, but we're in this for the long haul, and God is very patient, and He's going to bless people's lives through those who want to serve Him in amazing ways.
Yeah.
That's the exciting part about this is thinking about the present and all the work it takes is just made, something that I can get through each week, because I know that in years and decades ahead, it's going to be so much more than any of us can envision.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Well, let's talk about a little bit about the future and how you see things coming together. Now, I know you have a home already that's been announced that at just kind of, I guess, to the west of the main campus at Brigham Young University, and that's pretty adjacent to, I think, which will be the main teaching hospital at Intermountain in the Utah Valley Regional Medical Center area.
Right.
So that's all been announced, and so they'll I assume buildings will be built at some point in time, and faculty will come on board. But thinking about the curriculum and saying, okay, so now we have a clean slate here, and we kind of have a different mandate maybe than a lot of schools that are out there. Now, there's some core things that are going to be the same pretty much everywhere, but thinking about building the curriculum, and especially today, I think medicine's changed a lot, and it's changing really fast right now. I think we were chatting just briefly that when we started, there was no such thing as the internet, right? So it was hard for people to get information. So when you came to your doctor, you kind of said, the doctor's the expert here, and I'm going to trust him. And then Google came, and now every patient, the first thing they find out when they get a diagnosis, they Google it and say, what is the? And people do their own research, right, to find out what they think is best, and that's impacted medicine. I think it's different when a patient walks in with search results and says, hey, I've done a bunch of research and this is what I think. And I'm curious, I've actually never asked a surgeon. You're a surgeon by training. Right. Does that happen to surgeons as well? Do they come in and say, we think you should do this? I know a lot of physicians, I work with a lot of cancer doctors, and the patients are always walking in saying, well, I think we should try this and this and this. Do they do that to the surgeons as well?
No, it happens in surgery that, to be honest, the most common thing that people say to surgeons, at least in my field, is, "Oh, while you're in there, doctor, can you remove some fat?"
To fix that,
it's great. I would say that happened 2 or 3 times a week.
Isn't that crazy?
When I always kind of smile and said, "Don't worry, you're going to lose some weight with this surgery."
We're taking some stuff out of there.
But I think it's wonderful that people are more informed.
Yeah.
During my training, I spent 6 months in Ireland. And in Ireland at the time, back in the early 1990s, I could have walked into any room in the hospital and consented a person for any operation. They were so trusting, they wouldn't even have asked me, any much about the operation at all.
Yeah.
And while it's wonderful to see that trust, it is good to have informed people being part of the decision making. They should be. This is their life, and they should understand the implications of it. At the end of the day, it comes down to trust still. Yeah. You can have a lot of information, but, I have to trust my auto mechanic that they know what they're doing. I have to trust the plumber that she or he knows what they're doing. There's just some things that I'm not going to be as good at. Even though I have information, I can do a YouTube video and see what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And you can do that with medicine as well, but you still need somebody who has expertise.
Yeah, and there's no replacement for it, and that's part of the training is getting the students in so that the repetition of this is how we do it and this is how you approach that. And I tell people all the time that when you go to a surgeon, you want to ask them how many times you've done this surgery, because you don't want to be the one necessarily the one that they're practicing on, although sometimes it's fine, right? It's a fairly routine thing, but I totally agree that I think in a lot of ways it's made doctors have to be more sharp in a lot of ways that they I think it's when you do get challenged and you do get a question, sometimes it's like, hey, that's not a bad idea, right? Maybe there is something that you could think differently about. I think one of the big things that's happening in the whole world right now is the artificial intelligence and the change that having access to artificial intelligence. People ask me all the time, how is that changing medicine? Is it going to replace all the doctors? Are we just going to have a bunch of AI? And I tell them, we still have people that play chess, even though the AIs can beat the best chess player in the world will get beat by a machine. But if you give the best chess player a access to an AI, they can beat everything. And I think that's how I think about the future for medicine is we're going to have AI enabled doctors that it's not going to replace anybody, probably anybody. But what we're going to do is give them a new set of tools, and we have already. It's already taking shape. That's going to change the way that they approach medicine and make them even better. In fact, I hope that the concept is that we can take, the bottom quartile doctors and move them up in terms of their skill and their expertise and the access to information that they have. And I think that's truly the exciting revolution of AI. So how does that fit into your mindset about training the future generation? Because this is here to stay. I don't think it's not going anywhere. It's only going to become more prevalent. So as you're building a brand new curriculum and thinking about, all right, this is the traditional way we teach the students, but all this new stuff, we need to figure out how do we incorporate in there. So what are you thinking about that?
BioHive is a nonprofit building, branding, and bringing together Utah's fast-growing life science ecosystem. Get involved today. BioHive's Women in Technology and Science community hosts events for anyone and everyone wanting to support women in life science STEM. And BioHive's Health Tech Hub community hosts events for those operating at the intersection of health and technology. Register for events and see what's buzzing at biohive.com.
Well, I think that, 30, 40 years ago, it was probably almost possible if you had a very intelligent person who could memorize well, for that person to encompass the breadth of the knowledge of medicine that they needed to be a great physician. And if they had those talents, they were better than their peers because they just had more information at their disposal.
Yep.
The amount of information that's in medicine is overwhelming. And there's nobody on the planet that could possibly know all that information. And so it's wonderful that AI and other similar tools are being developed so that you can have at the point of care the information you need. Medicine is still a very intimate process. And in its best form, I think it always will be.
I think so too.
It's great to have a relationship between a patient, their family, and a physician where you trust each other and where that person can help counsel you as to what is best. Ideally, that physician, understands through an examination, through listening to you, what it is you need. And then they can rely on AI tools to help them get access to information they couldn't possibly have in their practice in 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And with that combination of increased knowledge and being a caring person who knows how to use that knowledge, the results in medicine should be much better. And the amount of medical mistakes, errors, whatever you want to call them, should be decreased significantly. Yeah. And that would be a plus for everybody.
Oh yeah, no, and I think that is the direction we're headed. I think that's where we're going.
In your field, I just think that, with cancer, it's just, before it was, well, we'll give you this cocktail and hope you're a responder.
Yep.
We know that 30% respond and 70% don't. And wouldn't it be nice to know you're going to be a responder before I even give you a drug based on a profile that we can now have ahead of time?
Yeah, exactly. And biology is so complicated, like you said, in medicine, on the research side of things, it's the same thing we become super specialists in one very, very narrow area. Right. And I think the same thing happens in medicine. You kind of carve out, this is kind of my niche that I know better than most people, this particular area, because there's just so much to know. One person can't know all of that stuff. But this revolution that we're seeing allows us to connect dots in a way that is really hard for the human mind to do. One, because drawing on all that information when it's not there, you can't draw on it.
Right.
And so using an artificial intelligence to help supplement what your human intelligence can do. And I really do think it's a lot like enabling these expert chess players to be, once they have the AI with them, they're unbeatable. They can beat the program by itself. So I really think that's where we're headed. And we're seeing all more and more that incorporating artificial intelligence into our data analysis and like you said, if we can look at the right patterns and say these are the people that respond and these are the people that don't respond to a particular therapy, we don't have to go through the trial and error to say, well, I hope you're in the 30% because the next one's only 20%, the one after this, and then we'll try the one after that. But we can get to the best thing for the best patient, or the best situation for their disease.
Yeah, I hope that the whole medical training establishment can catch up to this, because we should be training students right now to use these tools, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all these tools that are just coming online as part of their learning, but also part of their practice. And yet we expect them to go into a national board exam with none of that, and a memorization test.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that we don't design a test or an examination or a competency system that says, how can you use these tools to be a great physician? It should be part of it, not in isolation of it.
No, I totally agree with that. I think, it's hard because it's hard to keep up when things are changing so fast. But I think we'll see that. I would almost guarantee in the near future. It's funny you had mentioned incorporating a lot of the virtual reality and things. Being a surgeon, I've heard several studies that have actually been published to say, young people that play a lot of video games actually are better surgeons, and you wonder whether that becomes part of the selection process. I mean, if there's data that says that's right, I mean, if we're looking for the best doctors and that helps them, then maybe that needs to be part of what we look at as well. But those kinds of things, they're hard to adopt because it's so different than what we're used to. Right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was applying for residency, there was a program where part of the entrance to their residency was they gave you a block of soap and a knife and had you carve something.
Oh, is that right? Oh, that's cool.
And that does show some dexterity skills. I don't know how relevant it was to surgery, but nowadays you could ask somebody to perform a simple operation and see them do it in a virtual situation.
Yeah, in a simulator. Yeah, that'd be pretty amazing. And I'm sure that's not that far away from us from it happening. So are you as you're thinking about how you're going to fulfill this mission of having an international reach as well? I guess that we have technology today where we can do surgeries remotely. Is that something that will be part of the curriculum as well, as you're starting to think about, having international connections across the world? Have you done any of those kinds of surgeries? That I've seen them. I've never been in the room when they're done, but it looks pretty amazing that you could take somebody that has a particular set of skills that maybe doesn't exist in a certain place and try to enable a difficult operation or even a routine operation that would be hard for the physician in another location.
Well, that's already happening in hospitals every day in this country, because there are robotic devices that can perform surgery, and the surgeon is sitting at a console that is 5-10 feet, but it could be 500 or 5,000 miles away for all practical purposes, and that has happened, in fact. So, that's a high-end resource. Yeah. And in the parts of the world that might, you might say, well, they don't have enough surgeons. Well, they're not going to maintain that robotic device, right? So you still need, for the foreseeable future, we need to train humans how to do it. Yeah. And then hopefully the technology will, diffuse out across the world to improve those. I mean, these robotic devices are, they have no tremor. Every human on the planet has a tremor to one degree or another. Yep. And so there are things that they can do that exceed human capabilities. But again, it's in most parts of the world, you're going to need a human for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about questions you probably get asked a lot, so that we can answer them here, so you don't have to get answered. You don't have to get asked as many times. But what do you see in terms of the student body and the types of students, and how big do you foresee the medical school class to? I'm sure it's going to change over time, but what are you planning for in terms of the types of students that you're looking for and the size of the medical school?
Well, the types of students, we want people who care. We want people who want to serve people in need. And I think almost everybody enters into medicine with that. Yeah. that's not so much the problem. They're intelligent people. They have a desire to serve their fellow human beings. That's pretty common in medical school. Part of the problem, I think, is what happens to people as they go through medicine. And because it's so demanding, it's easy to be in the mindset, I need to focus on my education. And so they don't do as much community service. They don't serve in their church. They oftentimes ruin their marriage if they have one because they're spending so much time focusing on medicine with the thought that I'll do all that stuff when I finish this.
Yeah.
And then they go to residency and realize, well, residency is even busier. And so I'll do it when I finish residency.
Yeah.
And then they get out into practice, and the first few years of practice are very demanding as well. And so what happens is they never get back to what it was that originally brought them into medicine. And so I think the key is not only selecting people with those traits of compassion and humility, but designing a curriculum that encourages that has service built into it. And the curriculum that we're designing has research and humanitarian service built into it from the very start, because we want them to understand you need to do those things now and every part of your life so that you develop a love for it. The joy of serving others is its own reward. Mm-hmm. And if you do it, you'll understand that. And if you don't feel that and you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, you get lost in the details of and kind of lose the big picture. But I agree with you completely that I think there's something irreplaceable about being put in a position where you're just serving for the sake of serving, and there's you're not doing it to pass a test, you're not doing it, you're just doing it to help somebody else, and it puts you in a different mindset, and I think that's wonderful. So what about the size of the class and what you're thinking about how big these the medical school is going to be?
So to be accredited, the Liaison Committee on Medical Education is the LCME. They wouldn't likely never allow you to start with more than about 60 students. Yeah. And many medical school classes begin smaller than that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea. It's proof of concept.
Yep.
And they want to make sure that you can do what you say you can do. And so we'll probably start with around 60 students. But our goal is, as we prove that we're capable of doing this, to grow over time to something that produces, a much larger cohort than that. And I think we would have the capacity to produce between 200 and 250 students a year, at some point in the future. Because, again, we're training people to aid in the humanitarian mission of the church and, in fact, the overall mission of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so, if we've got a good thing going, why wouldn't we want to have more people doing it?
Yeah, and heaven knows we need it too. So, yeah, for sure. Well, I wanted to switch gears a little bit and get your just perspective on some changes that I've noticed, and I'm involved in medicine. We have a different demographic in the world now than we did even when we were kids, and certainly further in the past. We've always had kind of a pyramid-shaped demographic where we have a lot more young people than we do old people. Right. And we're actually turning into a column now where we have just as many old people as we do young people. And pretty soon it's going to turn upside down. And we're headed in that direction. Right. And with that comes a lot of challenges for our medical systems and for doctors. And when you have a lot of young people, you focus on a lot of acute care. They break their arm, you wrap it up, send them home. You have the surgery, you send them home. But now we're dealing more and more with chronic diseases, and we're not great at treating chronic diseases. I think that we're getting better, but we're still not great, and especially curing chronic diseases. And so we've been thinking a lot about how do we keep people healthy, as opposed to kind of the mindset has always been, a sick person comes to the doctor to get well, but we don't study the healthy people as much. So why do some people get sick and other people don't? And so we're working on a lot of work right now to use evolving data that we're able to generate with medical records and with genomics and proteomic data to start asking questions about, we know we have genetic risk. All of us, we inherit good things and bad things from our parents. Mm-hmm. And every genetic risk that we know of, I should never say never, because there's always exceptions to everything, but almost all of them are not 100% penetrant, meaning that we don't always show if we have a certain mutation or a certain genetic defect, we don't always present that. And so the question is, why? Why do some people stay resilient to that mutation, and some people get sick? And so we're starting to try to think about shifting medicine to say, well, let's try to keep people. So, my old mentor is a very famous cancer researcher. He said the best treatment for cancer is never getting cancer. Right? And being a surgeon that's taken out a lot of tumors, I'm sure you'd agree with that. That it's better not to get the disease. So thinking about kind of that, change in philosophy as we're because to be honest, we've got to keep people healthier longer. If we have this change in the demographics, going to force us to do it, because we need to keep people working longer. We need to, we can't afford to have 30 million Americans in long-term care facilities. We just don't have the money to pay for that. So what you're thinking about what's happening right now, and there's a lot of talk about Make America Healthy Again and those types of slogans that are out there. But do you sense the change? You see that happening, and how do we switch the way we think about the future for medicine? It's prevention of things have never been popular. It's never. We've talked about it forever. But if I came to you as a doctor and said, "Here's all my DNA. What should I do?" Physicians they don't know what to look at that DNA sequence and say, oh yeah, you got to do this. Everyone's going to get the same advice: eat right, exercise, do things that are healthy habits. But we've got to get a little bit beyond that, I think. So what do you sense right now that's happening, and what gives you hope for the future that we can make a change there in how we're thinking about keeping people healthy?
What if you could get rewarded just for being healthier? Meet Galvin, the company using the latest blockchain technology to reward you for taking care of yourself. They help with your mind, body, and soul like a personalized health assistant to track your progress and help you feel better. Galvin's G Plus app rewards you for exercise and assesses your mental health in under a minute using AI and over 2,500 voice biomarkers. If you're feeling off, G Plus gives you personalized power-ups, science-backed techniques to help you feel better fast. And here's the best part. When you prioritize your wellness, you earn crypto. Ready to level up your health? Use promo code GOODMED20 at checkout for 20% off. Download G Plus today at the Apple app or Google Play Store and start your wellness journey with Galvin.
I think it's in part a leadership issue. We expect our political leaders to, keep us happy.
Yeah.
And it's like raising your children in a sense. What they want isn't always the best thing for them.
Yep.
And parenting, great parenting is a mix of loving and guiding. And I would hope that at some point, both in healthcare and in the political landscape, that we would have the leadership that would say, this matters.
Yeah.
And I think that the American people and people throughout the world would rally around great leadership, but it's going to take a different kind of leadership than we've currently, over the past few decades, been trying to create, I guess, is the best way to say that. And so one route is just, it's the public health measures, it's all that. But with these other tools and with informed people just saying, we can project that your life will have this and this happen if you do these things, and these other bad outcomes will happen if you don't do those things. I think a lot of people would respond to that information if they knew with more certainty that my genetic profile warns me of these things. And this is very similar to religion in a sense. God gives you a roadmap of what will bring you happiness and what will bring you misery, but he lets us choose.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree completely. Well, we're getting a lot of interesting new tests, diagnostic tools that are available, and I think that'll be helpful as well as a physician can sit down and say, we even have these aging clocks that people are developing to say, here's how fast you're aging, right? And we all know we don't age the same way. No. You mentioned President Nelson, over 100 years old, and he's in better shape than a lot of people a lot younger than that. And so he's, his aging clock probably looks pretty different than, he doesn't have a lot of peers because there's not a lot of people that old, but probably a little different. But as we get those tools, I think that'll be that'll be one way that we can show people, hey, this is where you're at, and if you do these things, it's going to change how fast that clock's spinning. And I think some of that's happening now, and I think. To be honest, I think the focus on obesity right now has a lot of positive things associated, because obesity is the one thing that it's easy to measure at your house, to step on the scale, and when you lose weight, it makes you feel good, right? And so reinforcing that behavior that's why the new obesity drugs have done so well, because people see immediate,
right, and people want to weigh less.
Exactly,
they do want to be healthier. Unfortunately, we're surrounded by food in this country. And not all of it's healthy food, and so there's a maldistribution of food in the world.
Yeah,
and that creates a problem here, and it creates the opposite problem elsewhere.
Exactly. And our bodies, we 120, 150 years ago, a lot of people starved in the winter because there wasn't access to food, even here in this country.
Right.
And our bodies were in tune to store some extra energy to say, hey, winter's going to come and we need to have these reserves. And that's not a problem anymore for most of us, at least in this country. And so we haven't adjusted, because we've done amazing with technology to change the access to food supply, and we have food that can not spoil as fast. Right. And we've added a lot of stuff to it we don't really know what's doing to us as well, which I think we're starting to realize a lot of those preservatives and additives may not be good for us in the long run. We can measure acutely. It's like, it doesn't do anything. And I tested this on a mouse in 30 days and it was fine, right? Yeah. What does that happen when you eat that for 50 years? How does that change things? And those are really hard things to study. But I think, we're hopefully, we're starting to see some changes, and I to be honest, I think trying to ride this momentum to say, hey, and I agree with you completely. There's nobody that wants to be unhealthy, but there's a lot of people that aren't willing to do what they know will make them more healthy. But that's where what role does medicine play in bridging that gap to say let's help people to be able to bridge where maybe they're willpower and their the things that and to be honest, everybody's a little different too, and you said it's a real intimate relationship between a patient and a doctor, and you can't treat everybody the same way. Everybody's a little different, so there's hopefully we're getting better and better tools available to us, but that's I think the focus for the future is how do we enable patients and enable doctors to address some of these issues that, these are big things. I don't think people realize how much strain is put on our healthcare system right now. And if we continue to extrapolate, healthcare spending out to the future, it doesn't look very good. I'm not sure there's very many hospital systems that are going to stay solvent in the future if things keep going the way that they're going.
Right. And part of it too, I think there's some simple solutions. Support structures matter.
Yep.
It's hard to do anything on your own, but if you have a group or whatever, I think of my own, I love doing Pilates. It's a wonderful workout. It's, for the past 7+ years since I've done Pilates, I haven't had a single injury when I've been out hiking or whatever, because my body's in better shape.
Yeah.
So I love the concept of Pilates and I like the workouts, but part of what I enjoy is the fact that when I show up there's 8 or 9 other people that are in that class that I know. And it's a community sense. And so that encourages me to go as well, because I know those other people are looking forward to seeing me as much as I'm looking forward to seeing them, because we're friends.
Yeah. Yeah, we are social creatures. We need that interaction. That's part of the other, I think real tragedy that's happening is the mental health issues in our country. And a lot of it has to do with we've become more isolated, even though our world is far more accessible and it's far easier to communicate. It feels like a lot of us are more isolated, and what's your thoughts about it's tough because we have specific specialties to focus on mental health, but it's kind of across the board, right? I mean, it's something every physician has to have in their bag of of things that they can draw on, because it's so prevalent nowadays.
Yeah, I think every specialty, mental health. Used to be you did a psychiatry rotation so that you could understand those concepts, but the vast majority of the class didn't go into psychiatry, and they didn't think too much about it after that.
Yep.
Nowadays, it doesn't matter what aspect of medicine your specialty is in. you're going to have patients who have depression. You're going to have patients that have anxiety. You're going to have patients that have OCD and other diagnoses like that are going to impact how you're trying to treat them. And there's never going to be enough mental health providers. And so we need to have physicians who have above a baseline understanding of this and can use some of the tools of things that help those patients comply and enjoy their lives.
Yeah, and I think that unfortunately it doesn't seem to be like a passing trend. In fact, if anything, it's becoming more and more severe as we try to adjust with the change of the impact on technology and all the things. I mean, there's so many things that probably contribute. We don't know everything that contributes to it. Why we have such a problem that we have. Well, let's think about the future and where you see medicine heading. What gives you hope about what's happening today and what you think is going to be different in the future? I know as a cancer researcher and being involved in cancer therapies, we want to be put out of business. We want to the perfect situation for me would be to have no more cancer in the world. But that's is that a reality, and is it a reality in my lifetime? I'm not sure, but we're making progress. But what gives you hope? The things that you're seeing in medicine to say in the next 10, 15 years how things are going to change in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, there's no question that the speed of discovery is accelerating because of the discoveries that have been previously made. The foundation's been built, and now people can just launch from an even higher foundation than they could 10 or 50 years ago. So there's going to be incredible discoveries that will make a difference. We have to figure out a way to pay for this.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that some of these discoveries are still unbelievably expensive.
Yeah.
And the way our system is set up, that is not sustainable. Even if we make the discoveries, if people can't afford it, it doesn't really matter. So something has got to change dramatically in how we charge and how we, remunerate those who make the discoveries. One of the sad parts of, I don't know if you've read the book Codebreaker.
Yeah.
But one of the sad parts there was in the middle of that whole wonderful discovery process, there was this brutal fight over patents and everything else by really talented people. And the system essentially made them adversarial to each other for a significant period of time. And so because there's so much money and fame on the line, right? And so we've got to figure out that part as much as the medical part. The medical discoveries will come.
Yeah.
But we've got to figure out how to reward people for making discoveries and companies for making discoveries and still make it affordable for people to use those discoveries, not just in this country, but everywhere in the world.
Yeah, no, I think it's and the pendulum swings back and forth all the time, and there's the regulations of because everyone will always point the finger at everybody else and say, well, it's not just my problem. It's it's the whole system that's kind of created this problem. And so I think we're kind of going through kind of a check to say, all right, well, it's amazing to just have no cap on the potential and the discovery. I think most people would totally agree if you said, if I cure cancer, I should make as much money as I want from it's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds amazing. You should make $1 billion if you cure cancer. But when it comes down to, we've gotten into this idea that we can focus on and personalize medicine to a point where I can get a drug approved for 50 people and I can charge $1 million a person. Right. I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense, to be honest. I'm glad people are addressing underserved diseases and rare diseases, but I think our incentives and how we've created that whole system, we know we have to change. It's unsustainable the way that we're headed right now. So I don't think there's easy solutions. There's not, snap of your fingers quick solutions. There's a lot of stuff that's being talked about right now that scares a lot of people because, if we shut things down too much, innovation will change.
No,
and so we got to walk that fine line there.
Yeah, there's a reason why many, if not most of the discoveries that change healthcare and stuff come out of the United States. Yeah. The system here incentivizes people to do that. Yep. And so discovery moves rapidly here.
Yeah.
But I hope that we're not losing sight of the fact that discovery is actually moving rapidly elsewhere in the world that doesn't have some of these incentives.
Yep.
And so it is proof of concept that you can make great discoveries without giant financial remunerations.
Yeah, no, and I think I am kind of in tune of what's going on in the biotech and pharmaceutical world, and I think we're starting to. I mean, the one thing about human beings is that if you're passionate and focused on doing something, you're going to find a way to make it work. And if we change the incentives, then we'll figure out a different way to do it. And I was just telling you before we came on camera that. I mean, we're doing trials all over the world now, and 15 years ago, I would have never done that. And, I would have done everything here in the United States. And so things are changing quite a bit and changing very rapidly because, we got to start thinking differently because we can't just keep doing what we're doing. But what's exciting is, like you said, we've built on this foundation that we've spent a lot of time and money building a foundation of scientific knowledge that's leading to a age of discovery that I just think we're going to look back and say, this is really the golden age of medicine. I mean, it really is. What the things that we are learning and the things that are, the rapidity that things are coming to the clinic and coming to patients is just incredible. It's so much fun to sit back and watch all the years of research and building this knowledge and all the translation of these things. I mean, even the pandemic that happened a few years ago, and you can complain and question, but how fast we came up with a vaccine, unbelievable.
Yeah, that could have never happened 10 years earlier.
Incredible, just to think about.
I think the other thing that we should probably be focusing on is that, every now and then an Albert Einstein comes along that makes incredible discoveries that nobody else has made. But I'm positive there has to be Albert Einstein levels of people all over the world
for sure
that we never find out about because they're never given the opportunity to develop their talents. And I think, one of the great things we could do is try and figure out how do we find those people?
Yeah.
Because if we had dozens of those people working on problems, I think we'd make incredible progress for all of mankind.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think that a cure to a lot of the world's problems is I mean, it's interesting that healthcare and providing health to people actually brings peace with it as well. Right. It's fascinating, that connection. But being able to, I agree with you. If you have Albert Einstein out working in the field, he's never going to know that.
It was a good thing he didn't spend his life in a post office.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the amazing things of, for example, the BYU Pathways program. Is that it gives education to more people. And through that process, you're going to find a lot of people who are going to do great things in higher education. Yeah. That, again, wouldn't have done it because they just need an entry.
They didn't have the exposure. Yeah, exactly. No, it's amazing. It's been, and that's where the use of technology and being able to, apply a lot of these advances, that's how we're going to change and how we are changing the world right now. I have a son that's in Africa on a mission right now, and just amazing how it seems like everybody that all of his companions he's working with and the other missionaries that are from Africa, they're all using these tools to get access to education and get access to experiences they'd never have before. And so we're literally changing those countries because we're bringing things to them that they've never seen before.
Yeah, once you and your family have access to a cell phone and the internet, it's an entirely different world. And you still need to put food on the table. You still need to work hard, but you can start to see what could be. Yeah. And once that's planted in your heart and mind, your ability to become something that God wanted you to become is so much greater.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Well, Mark, this has been so fun to sit down and chat. I'm excited to see what happens with this, and I couldn't I couldn't have chosen a better person. I've gotten to know you a little bit, and I think that you're the right person for this job, and we're excited to see what you build. I know the community's really rallied around this, and I think the impact this is going to have on the world, I think we just barely understand it right now. I think the mission for this medical school and what it can do for the world, I think it has a ton of potential to do a lot of really, really good things. And so I couldn't think of a better person to be leading this. We're excited to watch what happens. What's the next couple years look like for us, and when's the first class going to be coming into the school?
Well, we just submitted our accreditation documents at the end of July, which was a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
It was miraculous to accomplish in 6 or 7 months what normally takes 18 to 24 months.
Incredible, yeah.
And that was largely with a group of volunteers, just very dedicated people from all over the country who said, I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
So that was an incredible start. The accreditation process will play out over the next year or so. And if everything goes well with that, we could potentially have our first class here in 2027.
Wow.
It could be in 2028, 2029. Yeah. We haven't defined that yet.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of divine help. And so I have to believe that there's a reason why we're getting so much help.
Yeah. No, well, that'll be truly remarkable if you can pull that off that quickly. I just was thinking about everything that would have to come together, and it's like, wow, that's a big job. But it sounds like a lot of just amazing things are happening to open the path to make this happen. So we're excited to see what happens in any way that we can help and support things. We're big supporters of what you're trying to accomplish. So
thank you.
Yeah, we'd look forward to having you back on in the future to talk about how things are coming together. But excited to see the new medical school and the new. I'm glad you didn't retire. And
well, I was never going to retire. I just got a change of calling.
Change of calling. That's I think go. But we got to keep you here, which is great. Well, thank you so much, Mark, and excited to see what happens for the future.
Well, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of Good Medicine. Thanks for joining us as we explore the science and stories behind health, medicine, and innovation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please click, follow, and leave a review for the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have questions or comments for me, please put them in the comments section on YouTube or reach out on all social media platforms at Good Medicine. Links are in the description. The best way to support the podcast is to check out the sponsors of the show. You can do this by looking at the links in the show notes. That's it for today. I'm Dr. David Beers, and we'll see you next time.